You won't believe what I'm about to tell you. But please know, this isn't a story I made up. My name is James Martinelli, and 5 days ago, the 13th of September, 2025, the date is burned into me the way a scar refuses to fade. That morning began as countless mornings had. The steady rhythm of my retirement, the smell of oil and dust in the garage, the scattered radios and antique clocks waiting for me to coax them back into life. I was 62, a man others would call ordinary, yet my days were stitched with small rituals: coffee in the chipped mug, my cat resting by the doorway, my wife Maria humming in the kitchen. Everything was familiar, predictable, until it wasn't. The first whisper of strangeness began with the silence. The garage carried a weight, not absence, but presence. Even the ticking clocks seemed to hold their breath. My hands fiddled with the tubes of a 1962 Grundig radio when the pressure rose in my chest. It wasn't pain, it was recognition, as though the air itself was warning me. Something is about to break through. I tried to brush it off, muttering that I just needed another cup of coffee. But denial doesn't stop eternity. The radio wasn't even plugged in when it emitted a hum, sweet and impossible. I leaned closer. The hum thickened into words, clear as crystal. James, are you ready? The screwdriver clattered to the floor. My breath froze. My garage had become a sanctuary of the supernatural. I told myself it was my imagination, but all day, signs multiplied. Every clock I repaired stopped at exactly 3:27 p.m. My cat stared at me as though it knew more than I did. Even the air outside felt strange. My elderly neighbor shouted across the street, "Strange morning, isn't it? Like the world is holding its breath." His words dug into me like a prophecy I hadn't asked for. That night, I woke at 3:33 a.m. The glow of the numbers burned into my eyes, the kind of detail you can't shake because it feels alive. The refrigerator was silent. The entire house muted, as though heaven itself had pressed pause. I whispered into the quiet, "God, what are you trying to tell me?" There was no reply, only silence that felt as if it was watching me. By afternoon, the silence broke into a storm. The music box I had been repairing suddenly played, though its guts were disassembled, the melody floating like incense. My body convulsed. A whooshing sound filled my ears, and the floor tilted. Yet instead of falling, I rose. I looked down and saw myself slumped against the bench. My first reaction was denial. No, this can't be. But denial crumbled in the face of reality. I was outside my body. And I wasn't afraid. The air shimmered. The walls of the garage dissolved like smoke. A corridor of light opened, stretching farther than my eyes could follow. Colors more alive than paint or prism pulsed like breathing walls. Voices, not spoken but sung, filled me with warmth. "Do not be afraid," one whispered into my soul. My name echoed, not as sound but as belonging. James. Every detail, sharp and light, had texture. Silence had weight. Time had dissolved. I realized then, the 13th of September, 2025, was the day I died. And yet, as strange as it sounds, death was not the end. It was the beginning. In that moment, everything ordinary, the radios, the ticking clocks, the broken objects I loved to repair, suddenly carried new meaning. Every broken thing I had ever touched whispered the same truth. Nothing is ever truly dead when God still breathes over it. And now I was the one broken, lifted beyond time, waiting for the touch of the one who repairs all things. The emotion that held me wasn't terror, it was awe. My whole being pulsed with a single realization: eternity is closer than breath, and I had crossed into it without warning. You would think fear should have swallowed me, but instead, There was peace, deep as a river, and in that peace, I knew my story had only begun. Weightless. That was the first sensation, when I realized my body was no longer bound to the floor of the garage, my chest no longer strained, my joints no longer ached, and the heaviness I had carried for decades evaporated like mist before the morning Sunday. What stunned me most was not the absence of pain, but the presence of freedom. Every breath, every thought, every fragment of me felt untethered. Below me, my lifeless body rested against the workbench, eyes closed, skin pale. It should have shocked me, should have filled me with dread, but instead, a stillness greater than any storm held me steady. I was not alone. Something, someone, was guiding. The garage melted away, and I stood before a corridor woven of living light. Imagine a hallway that breathes, its walls pulsing with a rhythm that seemed to match the very heartbeat of creation. Gold, sapphire, silver colors. I cannot fully describe, shifted and swirled like water, wrapping around me with tender warmth. Each shimmer hummed with melody, as if the very fabric of light was alive and singing. Voices rose, but not in the way we speak. They bypassed my ears and pressed directly into my soul songs. Vibrations, assurances. One voice soothed, "You are more than you ever knew." Another echoed, "Every moment is seen." I staggered forward, reaching my hand against the wall of light. Warmth surged into me, a love so fierce it threatened to undo me completely. I looked down the corridor and trembled. Shapes began to move, beings of radiance without faces, yet their presence undeniable. They weren't strangers. They felt like companions I had known before time, messengers clothed in purity. One stepped closer, though it spoke no words aloud. Its thought flowed into me like a river. "We are here to support you," I whispered. Support me for what? My own voice echoed as if suspended in eternity. The being didn't answer directly, but it lifted its hand, and a sphere of brilliant light floated toward me. It entered my chest, and instantly my trembling calmed. I gasped not out of fear, but relief. For the first time, I felt whole. Behind me, shadows of my earthly life flickered across the walls of the corridor. My childhood prayers whispered alone. My teenage tears, when I thought no one noticed. The first time I held my daughter and promised never to abandon her. Each memory alive, each moment shimmering with value I had never realized. My heart cried out, "Why are you showing me this?" The corridor pulsed a deep hum that shook me to the core. And then it happened. A voice, strong, tender, unmistakable, whispered my name. James. The sound wasn't heard. It was known. No one had ever spoken my name like that. Not parents, not friends, not even Maria. This wasn't recognition. It was possession. My knees weakened, for I understood in an instant. The voice belonged to the one who had always known me, even in the moments I had forgotten him. The figures of light bowed low, turning their gaze forward, as if awaiting the entrance of someone greater. The very corridor shivered, as though creation itself was bending in reverence. My heart pounded like a drum, both terrified and aching with longing. Every fiber of me whispered, "I am about to meet him." The emotion overwhelming me was anticipation, dread, and desire fused together. It wasn't just that I was crossing into eternity. It was that eternity was about to call me face to face. The tidbit etched into me then was this: when the soul leaves the body, it does not wander lost. There are guides, messengers, sentinels of light who usher you toward the presence. None of us will make the journey alone. And as I braced myself, trembling but unafraid, the brilliance at the end of the corridor began to thicken, pressing in with warmth and majesty. I whispered, "It's him. It must be him." The brilliance grew heavier, as though the air itself was becoming dense with meaning. I staggered forward, and the beings of light around me moved in harmony, their forms shimmering like flames that refused to be consumed. They were not gods, not to be worshipped, but attendants, their silence thick with reverence. Their attention was not on me, it was on what lay ahead. As I walked, the walls of the corridor rippled with more visions. My life stretched out like threads of a tapestry, every choice interwoven with moments I had long forgotten. I saw myself as a boy on the schoolyard, whispering for a friend I never thought would come. I saw myself as a teenager, crying in secret, believing nobody cared. I saw myself as a young husband, holding Maria's hand as she wept when money was tight, whispering, "We'll be okay." Each forgotten moment returned, not to accuse me, but to remind me, nothing is ever wasted in God's sight. The corridor pulsed with the same message again and again. Every second counts. I tried to protest, but so much of my life has been ordinary, wasted on broken radios and clocks. The light responded, humming softly. Even ordinary things carry eternal weight. I felt undone. My entire life, I had been a man who tried to fix what others had discarded. Radios, clocks, music boxes, things no one valued anymore. And now, in this place, I realized I had been living a parable. God, Himself, restores the broken. Every object I touched, every gear I aligned, had been training me for this truth. No life is too forgotten to be repaired. Then, one of the radiant beings stepped forward. Without words, it stretched its arm toward me. A flood of warmth entered my chest, and suddenly, the fear I hadn't admitted dissolved. The being's thought imprinted gently, "You are being prepared." My lips trembled. Prepared for what? The light swelled in response, the corridor trembling with power. My knees buckled, and before I could breathe, the presence intensified. It was not just brighter, it was alive, holy, near. The beings of light bent lower, their radiance dimming, as though bowing before something infinitely greater. And then I heard it again, my name. This time, the voice carried eternity inside it. The sound healed wounds I didn't even know I carried. Memories of rejection, failures, regrets, all dissolved in an instant. I whispered through tears, "I know you. I've always known you." The figure stepped forth, emerging from the brilliance. At first, only an outline, a man-shaped glow, brighter than the sun, yet I could look without pain. His robe shimmered like woven morning light, his presence heavier than mountains, yet gentler than water. When his eyes met mine, I broke. In them I saw every regret, every sin, every joy, every love. And instead of judgment, I found love fierce enough to undo me. I fell forward, whispering, "I don't deserve you." His hand reached out and touched mine. Life surged through me. Not life of this world, but eternal life, the kind that whispers, "You will never be the same." He spoke not with thunder, but with a voice both gentle and commanding, the kind of voice that could split galaxies and still soothe a child's cry. "James, you were never forgotten." I sobbed uncontrollably. All my life I had felt unseen, overlooked, ordinary, and in a single word, he shattered that lie. The main emotion of this moment was overwhelming. Love so fierce it consumed shame, so pure, it left no room for doubt. And the tidbit of truth stamped into me forever was this: when you see him, you will finally know why you were created. Every question, every ache, every longing finds its answer in his gaze. I whispered, trembling, "It's you." He didn't need to announce himself. My spirit had known him since before I was born. The light did not rush at me. It unfolded, like dawn, slowly finding the edges of a sleeping town. I felt it before I fully saw it, a living warmth moving over me in waves, the way a tide swells and recedes without breaking. The corridor itself seemed to bow, and the beings of radiance drew back in reverence, their brightness dimming the way candles soften when morning enters the room. I understood then that I was not stepping toward an idea or a memory or a hope. I was stepping toward a person more real than the ground I had walked on my entire life. My name moved through me again, and even without ears the sound was undeniable. Hearing here was not a mechanical thing. It was recognition. The syllables did not travel through air. They traveled through identity. Every time it touched my name, something in me that had rusted, loosened, the way a stubborn gear yields after the first patient drop of oil. I had spent years rescuing old radios and clocks, coaxing life out of what others had abandoned. Here, in one breath, I realized I had been the old machine, and he was the master at the bench. The presence condensed into form. At first it was outline and weight, a silhouette brighter than any star I had ever stared at from my porch. Then the outline became robe, the robe became motion, and the motion became nearness. There was a luminance to him I cannot explain by any earthly flame, no flicker, no shadow, only a radiance that felt like a promise kept. His eyes found mine, and everything in me that still braced for judgment collapsed into a flood of relief. I was known, not inspected, not measured, not sized up known, the way a traveler knows home by scent before the door fully opens. Reverent awe, holy fear rose through me like a tide. Not the terror that makes you run, but that bright ache that makes you kneel. Every regret I carried, tried to speak, tried to assemble evidence against me, and then failed under his gaze. The arguments inside me were like moths burning out in a single brush against the Sunday. The weight I had lived with for decades, mistakes that had hardened into habit, harsh words I could not recall, small betrayals I had explained away. Each one surfaced, not to condemn, but to dissolve. His nearness did what sermons and resolutions could not. It cured me without wounding me. I felt his attention on my life the way warmth settles into cold skin. It moved through ages and scenes and names, childhood shyness, young love and its fears, fatherhood's small triumphs and failures, the season when my hands, made for careful work, lost their sensitivity to hurry and pride. I kept wanting to apologize and kept finding that apology was too small a word for what was happening. This was not a courtroom. It was a clinic. He was not a prosecutor. He was a physician who had already decided to save the patient. You would think a meeting like this would be thunder and spectacle, but the truth is softer and heavier at once. It felt like velvet laid over a restless heart. It felt like the cool shade of a tree I did not know I had planted years ago. It felt like a lullaby humming beneath a distant storm. If you were standing beside me, you would have felt it too. The subtle way, the room you cannot see, tilts toward mercy as soon as he enters. I tried to speak with my mouth and realized the mouth I knew was no longer the instrument for this place. Words formed, but they were shaped from will and love rather than from breath. I offered him the only thing I had that mattered, consent. I let go, and in that letting go, the ache I had never named finally told me its name. It had always been longing for this face, for this love, for this settling of the spirit I had chased through 1,000 distractions without ever catching. He drew closer, and I felt the imprint of a hand take mine. Touch here is not friction, it is communion. Something alive flowed, not along the skin but through the person. Life recognized. Life. For an instant, I remembered every time on earth I had felt a sudden peace, for no clear reason, A quiet in the kitchen at midnight. The stillness after a hospital corridor had emptied. The unearned calm on a morning when bills pressed like stones, and I knew those small reprieves had been previews, a far-off echo of this nearness. I wanted to tell him I was unworthy. The thought rose, shaped by old shame, and dissolved before it reached him. Worthiness belonged to the currency of my world. Love belonged to the economy of his. He regarded me the way a master gardener looks at a wintered field, not with disappointment, but with anticipation. The field is not unworthy for being frozen. The field is a promise once spring puts its hand on it. His gaze passed beyond me, as if reading more than memory, reading intention. Reading the secret paths of the heart, where yes and no are written long before the mouth speaks. I understood, with a clarity that did not bruise, that he knew every reason I had turned left instead of right, every fear that had disguised itself as prudence, every fatigue that had dressed up as indifference. And still, his nearness did not shrink. If anything, he moved nearer. Heaven does not retreat from weakness. Heaven befriends it until strength is taken into the bargain. In that nearness, time thinned and turned transparent. Past and present did not line up like soldiers. They stood together like brothers. Meaning gathered depth. The music of the corridor, those voiceless hymns rose again, gently feathered around us, as though the very air wished to worship. I had always thought of worship as sound lifted upward. Here, I learned worship can also be silence that leans. I felt the mission before I heard it. It came as a weight in the center of my chest, gentle but undeniable, the way a letter weighs nothing and still changes every step you take to deliver it. A knowledge formed in me. This encounter was not only consolation, it was commissioning. The corridor had brought me to a threshold, and the threshold would return me with something burning that could not be carried lightly. Here is the tidbit that etched itself like a signature inside me, clear enough to teach without argument. When he calls your name in eternity, your purpose clarifies. Not the job you do or the title people use, not the habit you wear like a uniform. Purpose reduces to a single response: say yes and remain yes. Everything else finds its order after that. Reverent awe still held me. Love still unmade me. But beneath them now, a steady current gathered, the way a river grows quiet when it becomes deep. I knew I would be shown things I could not invent, and would not dare to invent. The kind of vision that a man tries to forget, and fails, because forgetting would hurt more than remembering. I also knew I would have to return, because love does not hoard its own fire. It sends flames to other hearths. You continue to breathe while you read this, and maybe you wonder how any of this could belong to you. Listen in the soft recess between one breath and the next. That is where his nearness begins. A milk glass glow behind the daily noise. If a clock stops inside your day, if a hum gathers behind your worries, if a stillness like a hand settles on your shoulder, with no one standing there, do not rush past it. It could be the corridor beginning, a quiet invitation, a familiar voice preparing your name for the moment. It will be spoken with weight. The beings of light remain near, witnesses to a meeting they themselves would not interrupt. I felt their joy as a warmth that did not compete with his, like starlight, content to be starlight. While the sun rises, the corridor brightened, and beyond his shoulder, the world I had left seemed to tilt closer, as if listening. I understood that love travels both directions, here to there to here, and that my wife's worried heart, at that very hour, was already feeling a comfort she could not yet explain. He did not need to prove himself. He did not need to argue or persuade or perform. His very presence was the proof. I had crossed, and he had found me not because I was clever or brave, but because he is faithful. I was emptied and filled in the same instant. I was smaller than I had ever been, and somehow more alive than any moment I had called alive. The awe calmed, but did not recede. It settled, like a new center of gravity deep in the soul. I knew that from here I would be shown what must be told, that the end of the month would not simply be dates changing on calendars, but a hinge that swings hearts open or slams them shut. I did not yet see the visions. I felt them approach the way a weather front approaches, a shoreline, pressure shifting, light altering, a hush sliding over the water. I steadied myself, if steadiness can be called, this quiet surrender. Everything in me waited. There is a moment in the presence of truth when the world, for a breath, becomes transparent, where you can see the scaffolding of your life, and the small, honest pieces fit into a picture larger than you ever imagined. You feel it now as you read, a soft hush, like the sound of pages turning in a room where someone is praying, like a candle's breath. The main emotion pressing over this hour with him is mercy, pure, relentless mercy that settles into the wounds you thought were permanent and starts to unpick them gently, as if untying an old knot. He leans closer, not in the dramatic way you might expect, not with thunder or lightning, but with a closeness that feels like a hand smoothing your hair. You continue to notice the small things, the way air tastes of salt and sun, even when there is no sea, the faint vibration under your feet as if the earth hummed a low hymn, the almost silent susurrus of 1,000 grateful thoughts brushing by like silk. Those soft forms, the whisper, the hum, the susurrus keep returning, because the place itself is made of comfort. It speaks in textures, not headlines. He reminds me, not with a list of my faults, but with a memory. The night I sat on the back step and prayed for something I could not name, when the world felt too heavy, and I thought I would simply become a man who kept his prayers to himself. I had forgotten that night, until he touched it, and it bloomed like an old photograph. You remember your own small, hidden prayers, 2 things you buried because nobody else would understand. He has kept them. He says mercy works like a slow clock, not a sudden strike. Repair happens over time, by hands that know how to coax life back into brittle things. You continue to feel the vibration of that promise. It is a tidbit I will carry, chosen not for what I have earned, but chosen because I am loved. There is no merit badge pinned to my chest here. If you have ever thought your mistakes disqualify you from being seen, set that down for a moment. In his presence, worthiness is secondary. The currency is love. You can almost taste it warm, like bread fresh from an oven you cannot see. That taste settles in the soul and rearranges priorities without shouting. Memories wash through me. Small domestic scenes that in life had seemed trivial. Maria's laugh when she caught me humming to myself in the kitchen. The smell of motor oil on my hands after a long day. The way my daughter's head rested against my shoulder on a long car trip when she was small. He unspools them gently, not to shame, but to stitch. Those moments are not marginal. They are the cloth of a life he values. In that quiet, you begin to understand how the mundane is holy when offered to him. If you are tempted to think your daily chores mean nothing, the corridor shows the opposite. Every ordinary thing can carry grace. The mercy is practical. He does not only heal grand sins, he comforts over the small, persistent griefs that wear you out. He reaches into regret the way a carpenter reaches for the right tool. He does not require a dazzling conversion. He requires a willingness to be known. There is a soft tightening in my chest when I remember how often I kept parts of myself hidden because I feared they would be judged. You probably have the same closet of small failures. The light here opens that closet like a window and invites fresh air. You continue to watch as he walks through my memories. Not like a critic, but like a parent rearranging a messy table. He pauses often at the small, tender failures. The time I promised more than I could give and felt the shame for years. The night I stayed silent when someone needed a word. The cheap, self-justifications offered in the tiredness of life. He does not scold. He inclines toward me with a voice that would have been a whisper if I had ears for it, soft and steady. And in that inclination, he seals over the shame with a balm so soft, you almost miss it if you are looking for fireworks. There is a practical smell to some of these memories. The iron tang of old radios, the sweet oil of clockwork, the coffee I never finished because I had to fix one more thing. Those aromas carry me back to the grit of living. And he does not erase the grit. He redeems the grit. He teaches me that the small work of my hands had been training for this training. My patience, my attention, my willingness to mend what others throw away. If you have ever done small, faithful work that seemed invisible, be encouraged. He sees it and values it. The tidbit held steady in that chamber of light is a simple instruction. Surrender the need to perform. It is not that action is irrelevant. It is that motive matters. When service is rooted in love, even the smallest labor sings. When service is rooted in performance, even great acts can hollow out. You continue to notice how that dual motive changes everything. If your work or sacrifice has felt like a transaction, let this be a small pivot. Offering out of love creates a different fruit than offering out of obligation. I felt something else there, a pressure, like a soft bell, in the center of my chest, a commissioning sewn into mercy. He told me not with a list, but with a shared glance, that being chosen does not remove the call to act. Mercy warms, then sends. You continue to hear that cadence. Rest, then go. Receive, then give. Be mended, then mend. This rhythm is not harsh. It is like breathing. Inhale because you must have air. Exhale because someone else needs oxygen. You notice how he handles the hardest truths, not by denying them, but by reframing them. The moments I had labeled as failures became footholds. The guilt I carried was shown as a place where grace could anchor. He pointed not to condemnation but to restoration. It was as if every regret had been a key, only I had never known which door it opened. He showed me that the doors all open to rooms where mercy waits. Soft forms kept arriving in the space between revelations. A hush, like velvet. A slow oscillation of warmth, like a summer porch. A faint chiming, like small bells in a distant chapel. These were not distractions. They were textures of presence. Reminders that the sacred is tactile. You continue to sense them now. Quiet indicators that love is not only doctrine, but body, not only message, but touch. By the time he finished, I was no longer a man tallying debts. I was a man whose hands had been used to carry small repairs into resurrection. He placed a weightless task in my palm, a responsibility wrapped in tenderness. You continue to feel its shape, not heavy like a yoke, but steady like a lantern. If you fold this moment into your day, remember one tender instruction. You are loved before you perform. Let that loosen the clenched places in you. Let that unbind the small arguments you have with yourself. Mercy meets you where you are, and from there, sends you onward. The visions began like curtains lifting one by one. Not rushed, but deliberate, as though eternity itself wanted me to feel the weight of each. His hand remained on mine, steadying me, because what I saw was not for faint hearts. The main emotion rising in me during this first revelation was urgency. A trembling urgency that felt like standing before a bell about to strike midnight. Jesus spoke, not through thunder, but in a current that flowed straight into my soul. At the end of September, the first event will begin, not outside, but inside. I gasped, because what unfolded was not disaster in the streets but awakening in the heart. All over the earth I saw ordinary people, farmers in fields, mothers with children, men in offices, prisoners on cold beds. In an instant, they all paused. Something unseen had touched them. Tools dropped. Conversations froze. Groceries slipped from hands. The atmosphere shifted, and every person felt the same pull. A sudden awareness that life was not what they thought, that someone was knocking inside their soul. Some wept without knowing why. Others clutched their chest as if something had brushed against them. Children, too, looked up from their games, wide-eyed. Families gathered, whispering in confusion. Do you feel it too? The world seemed to stop, not because of power outages or storms, but because millions were seized by a holy unease. I whispered, Lord, what is this? He answered, it is the awakening of hearts. It is me, knocking louder than ever before. Some will dismiss it as anxiety, others will medicate it away. Some will drown it in noise. But those who pause, those who listen, will begin to sense my presence more than ever before. The tidbit stamped into me then was this: the greatest shaking begins inside, not outside. It will not be headlines that first announce the move of God. It will be restless hearts, stirred souls, men and women, suddenly undone by a whisper they cannot explain. As the vision stretched, I saw division forming. Some responded with prayer, falling to their knees in their kitchens or bedrooms, whispering for forgiveness, surrendering their lives. Others laughed it off, saying, it's just stress, just nerves. But their laughter couldn't hide their unease. The spirit pressed harder. The silence of their hearts betrayed them. Jesus' eyes pierced me with both fire and tenderness. Tell them, James, this is not destruction. It is mercy. I am shaking them awake before the storm comes. I am knocking. And I will not stop knocking until choice is made. Urgency burned through me. I felt the clock tower inside the vision, its gears already moving, ready to strike. The world was about to feel something invisible, yet undeniable. A collective stirring that no scientist, no leader, no psychologist could explain away. You can feel even now what I felt then, can't you? That subtle tug in the chest, the whisper that says, there's more, pay attention, don't delay. That is the sound of the first event already drawing near. I wanted to shout in the vision. I wanted to shake people by their shoulders. Don't ignore this. Don't drown it in distractions. Stop and listen, because eternity is pressing in. But I had no voice there. Only the commission he placed in me to carry back and speak. The corridor pulsed brighter as the vision faded. My body trembled, my soul burning with the weight of it. The first event would be invisible to cameras, but undeniable to consciences. It was the bell before the storm, the mercy before the shaking. And as his words settled into me like fire, I realized I had become the messenger of the countdown. The vision shifted again, and I felt the atmosphere thicken, as though creation itself had leaned closer to hear what was about to be revealed. The urgency of the heart awakening still trembled inside me. But now, something greater was stirring, something vast enough to shake mountains and bend skies. The main emotion rising in me was awe mingled with dread. Not the kind that crushes, but the kind that tells you you're standing at the edge of something immense and uncontainable. Jesus' hand pressed firmer against mine. The second event, he said, will be written in the heavens and the earth. Creation will speak, and its voice will not be ignored. I saw the skies darken, not in storm alone, but in a strange display of colors. Auroras blooming across nations that had never known them. Veils of green, purple, and fire red danced above deserts, jungles, and cities, painting the night like the brushstrokes of God himself. People rushed from their homes, staring upward, their phones useless to capture what eyes alone could comprehend. Children gasped, parents whispered. Scientists muttered with confusion, we have no explanation. The ground beneath those skies trembled. In places not known for quakes, the earth shifted and split. Rivers overflowed their banks while deserts, barren for centuries, suddenly bloomed with flowers, as if spring had descended overnight. The oceans surged with strange tides, their waters glowing with a phosphorescence that startled fishermen into dropping their nets. I heard the groan of mountains, the sigh of forests, the cry of animals unsettled by forces they couldn't escape. I whispered in the vision, "Lord, is this judgment?" He turned to me with eyes both fierce and kind. "No, James. This is creation groaning, calling, longing for redemption. My children will recognize it, even as the world mocks. They will lift their hands and know these are signs of the times." The tidbit engraved on me was this: the earth itself preaches. When the human voice falters, when governments lie, when pulpits grow timid, creation will still cry out, and its cry will be unmistakable. I saw the reaction of the world. Some mocked, laughing under skies painted with impossible light. Others trembled, afraid to admit what their hearts already knew. Still others fell to their knees in the open streets, crying out without shame. A farmer in Brazil dropped his plow and wept into the soil. A scientist in Germany removed his glasses, stared at the sky, and whispered words he hadn't spoken since childhood. "God, are you there?" Even animals seemed to respond. Birds flew in strange patterns, as if choreographed by an unseen conductor. Dogs howled in unison. Cattle turned their heads all at once toward the horizon. The air vibrated with more than weather. It vibrated with testimony. Jesus leaned closer, his words weighty yet calm. "Tell them not to fear when the skies tremble and the ground shifts. Tell them not to lose heart when rivers roar or stars fall. These are not meant to destroy but to awaken." Some will try to explain it away, but those with eyes to see will know. I am speaking through creation itself. The awe I felt was overwhelming. It was one thing to see people awaken in their hearts. It was another to watch the very world convulse with the nearness of God. I realized in that moment that no human wall, no government edict, no hardened heart could silence this voice. When the heavens tremble, when the earth groans, all of us must pay attention. The corridor pulsed brighter again, and I fell to my knees within the vision. "Lord, will they be ready?" My voice cracked with both fear and hope. His gaze softened. "Some will, some won't. That is why you must tell them, James. The signs are not for spectacle. They are invitations. Creation itself is pleading. Prepare your hearts." You reading this now, can you feel that tug? It is the same voice creation will soon shout with winds and colors, with quakes and tides. Do not wait for the skies to split before you believe. Listen now. The earth is already whispering. And as the vision faded into a deeper silence, my heart pounded with awe. The second event would be no secret. Heaven and earth together would declare what mankind tried to ignore. The light around us dimmed into a sobering hue, like a veil of dusk settling over the corridor. I braced myself, because the peace of the awakening and the awe of creation's voice had prepared me for wonder. But now, I felt the sting of truth approaching like a blade. The main emotion gripping me was sorrow, heavy and cutting, because what I was about to see was necessary but painful. Jesus' voice did not tremble. It was steady, calm, but weighty, with the seriousness of a judge and the tenderness of a shepherd. The third event, James, will be exposure. What has been hidden in darkness will no longer remain concealed. Secrets will spill out, lies will unravel, and thrones built on deception will fall. In an instant, I was shown great halls of power, government chambers, boardrooms, even pulpits. Men and women sat confident, whispering behind closed doors, believing themselves untouchable. Yet suddenly their words, once hidden, poured out for all to hear. Documents leaked, recordings surfaced, masks slipped. The world reeled as corruption was dragged into the open. I gasped as I saw leaders crumble, not just political rulers, but spiritual figures too. Priests who had clothed themselves in holiness while hiding filth. Pastors who had preached one gospel in public but lived another in private. Officials who had enriched themselves while the poor starved at their gates. Their empires, carefully constructed, collapsed like sandcastles at high tide. Crowds filled the streets, outraged, betrayed. I saw families divided, churches split, friendships severed, as truth forced people to choose sides. Some clung desperately to their idols, defending the very leaders who had lied to them. Others broke free, their eyes finally open, though their hearts ached from betrayal. "Lord," I whispered, "this looks like chaos." He shook his head slowly, his gaze firm yet merciful. "Chaos only to those who do not understand. For truth is never chaos, it is light. And when light shines, shadows scatter. Exposure is painful. Yes, it will hurt, but it will also heal." The tidbit etched into me was this: exposure is not God's cruelty, it is His mercy. Lies, if left hidden, become poison. Only when light floods in can healing begin. I saw pastors confessing publicly, trembling under the weight of their own hidden sins. I saw politicians dragged before courts, their shame broadcast for all to see. I saw ordinary families too, secrets revealed at dinner tables, long-hidden betrayals surfacing in whispers that shattered trust, but also began the slow work of reconciliation. No corner of society was exempt. The sorrow in me grew heavy. I wanted to look away, to cover my ears, but Jesus held me steady. "Tell them, James, do not be shaken when exposure comes. Do not despair when leaders fall. My kingdom does not crumble with theirs. I remain king, uncorrupted, unshaken, unchanging." The vision showed me two groups forming. One group clung to the collapsing structures, refusing to let go, screaming against the light that revealed them. The other, smaller but radiant, embraced the exposure. Even though it hurt, they wept, repented, reconciled, and found freedom in the truth. You know this feeling, don't you? That dread when hidden things come to the surface, when the mask you wear cracks. Yet, if you've ever confessed in tears and found mercy instead of condemnation, you understand why exposure is grace. It wounds only to heal. As the vision swirled around me, I trembled under its weight. I thought of Maria, my daughter, my friends. Would they endure this? Would they survive the shock of betrayal and the pain of truth? Jesus looked at me, his eyes full of fire and love. Yes, if they cling to me, exposure is not the end. It is the beginning of cleansing. The corridor pulsed brighter, and I realized that this third event would not just affect nations and churches. It would touch every heart, every secret, every shadow, every lie would face the light. And though it would tear, it would also set free. The sorrow still lingered in me. But beneath it, hope began to rise like dawn, breaking through clouds. The corridor shifted again, and this time, the light did not blaze or wound. It gathered, warm and gentle, like 1,000 candles flickering in unison. After the sorrow of exposure, what unfolded now was a picture of unity that made my soul ache with longing. The main emotion that wrapped around me was hope. Deep, unshakable hope that whispered of home, of family, of something eternal, already breaking into time. Jesus' eyes softened as he spoke. The fourth event, James, will be my gathering, not of a building, not of a nation, not of one denomination or another. It will be the gathering of hearts. My spirit will knit my children together across oceans, cultures, and languages, and no boundary will be able to divide them. In an instant, I saw it. Men and women praying in their kitchens, in prison cells, on rooftops, in barns, in forests, in cities both sprawling and forgotten. They weren't waiting for leaders to organize them, weren't waiting for buildings to open their doors. They were simply rising all at once, compelled by the same spirit, drawn to the same voice. A farmer in Africa knelt in the dirt, tears streaming as he whispered praises. At the same moment, a grandmother in Mexico lifted her wrinkled hands in worship. A teenager in New York sang a song she didn't even know she had learned, her voice trembling with awe. In Asia, prisoners held hands, whispering prayers in the dark, each unaware of the others, yet all connected by one invisible thread, the Spirit Himself, weaving them into a single tapestry. It was not noise. It was harmony, a global choir rising without rehearsal, united not by culture or creed, but by the fire of His Spirit. I could hear it, the song of the saints, fragile and fierce, carrying the same refrain. You are worthy. You are with us. We belong to you. I gasped. It's as if the whole world is one church. Jesus' face glowed with delight. Yes, James, this will be my greatest sign, for the unity of my children will terrify the enemy. Walls will not contain them. Borders will not divide them. They will recognize each other through my Spirit, and their love will announce my presence to a trembling world. The tidbit etched into me was this: the true church is not confined to four walls. It is a living network of souls bound by love, awakened and gathered by the Spirit, stronger than any empire and brighter than any star. I saw governments watching nervously, baffled by what they could not control. How are they organizing? Leaders demanded, but there was no answer. It wasn't a movement with headquarters. It wasn't funded by money or advertised by media. It was born in the invisible places, carried by whispers, sealed by fire. Some mocked, calling it hysteria. Others persecuted, dragging believers into courts. Yet the more they tried to stamp it out, the more it spread like embers caught on the wind, igniting fields they could never contain. What began in kitchens and prison cells spilled into streets, families, and workplaces. And though it was not planned, it was perfectly orchestrated. Jesus' voice pressed deeper into my spirit. Tell them, James, this is not the end. It is the preview of eternity. When my children unite in spirit, it is a foretaste of the kingdom to come. Do not fear the shaking. Do not despise the exposure. For what follows is the gathering a love so fierce, so unstoppable, that no power of hell can withstand it. The hope in that vision burned brighter than any fear I had carried. I realized that the fourth event would not be doom, but promise. It would be the answer to loneliness, the antidote to despair, the declaration that none of us are alone. And even now, as you hear these words, you may feel it, the subtle tug in your chest when you meet another believer's eyes, the sudden kinship with a stranger who carries the same spirit, the warmth that rises in prayer groups where hearts beat in rhythm, though tongues differ. That is the gathering beginning. It has already started. As the vision swelled with light, I fell to my knees, tears of joy streaming through my soul. The sorrow of exposure had not been the end. It was the pruning before the bloom. And this bloom, this spirit-led unity, was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. The light of that global gathering still clung to me when the vision began to dissolve. My spirit trembled, torn between wanting to remain in that eternal brightness and knowing I was about to be sent back. The main emotion surging in me was reluctance, almost grief, because every fiber of my soul longed to stay, where His presence was thick, where love was the air itself. But Jesus' gaze pierced through my hesitation. James, he whispered. You cannot remain here yet. You have words to speak, a testimony to carry. My people must be warned, and my children must be comforted. His words weren't harsh. They burned with tenderness, yet they allowed no escape. I clung to his robe, my voice breaking. Lord, I don't want to go back. Life there feels so empty compared to this. His hand lifted my face, and his eyes shone with a gentleness that undid me. I will go with you. When you doubt, remember my eyes. When you are afraid, remember my hand. When you speak, remember my promise. You will not walk alone. Then his last command branded itself into me like fire. Tell them the 4 events are not the end. They are the beginning. The shaking will strip away what is false, but what is true will finally stand. Tell them not to fear. Tell them to prepare their hearts. For I am nearer than they think. Suddenly the corridor began to fade, pulling me backward. I cried out, Jesus! His final words thundered softly. I am with you always. The weight of my body slammed back into me. My chest heaved, my lungs clawed for air, and my eyes shot open to see Maria's face bent over me, streaked with tears. James, can you hear me? She cried. I gasped. I saw him. I saw Jesus. She clutched me as though to anchor me in this world, but my soul was still glowing with the residue of eternity. Since that day, the fire in me has not dimmed. Nights I wake at 3:33 a.m. The room thick with his presence, the same whisper pressing into me. Remind them, do not fear their laughter. Do not be silent. Every ordinary thing feels changed. The bird's morning song like a choir, the red of a traffic light, like a reminder of his corridor of light, even a simple glass of water, like communion. But with the beauty comes the burden. Many roll their eyes when I speak. Friends say I'm obsessed. Family sighs when I bring it up again. Yet the silence burns like fire in my bones, and I cannot hold it in. Jesus showed me what is coming, and to withhold it would be betrayal. The tidbit stamped into me is this: testimony is not optional when heaven entrusts you with fire. To speak is obedience. To remain silent is disobedience. And though I am just a mechanic, a husband, a father, so I write, I speak, I whisper to anyone who will listen. September's end is not just another turn of the calendar. It is a hinge of history. 4 events will begin: the awakening of hearts, the signs in creation, the exposure of corruption, and the gathering of his children. Prepare not with barns or bank accounts, but with prayer, repentance, and trust in him alone. Every time I hear the ticking of a clock now, I feel the countdown. Every 3:33 wake-up is a reminder. The hour is nearer than we think. And still, in all of it, his words steady me. Fear is not your inheritance. Hope Island. I walk this earth differently now. Every step heavy with eternity. And when my neighbors laugh, when my friends doubt, when my family shifts uncomfortably, I hold on to the truth that someone, somewhere, is listening, and that is enough. Because Jesus promised, when the shaking comes, his children will not be abandoned. He is already here. I have spoken what I was shown. And now, I ask you to let these words settle like seeds in your soul. Slow down for a moment, breathe, and let the weight of eternity brush against your chest. Do not drown this message in noise. Do not brush it aside as fantasy. What I saw was more real than the chair you sit on, more true than the ticking of any clock. The 4 events will come, but they are not meant to terrify you. They are meant to awaken you. The stirring in your heart is not madness. The trembling of creation is not random. The exposure of lies is not chaos. The gathering of believers is not coincidence. Each is a thread in the tapestry of God's mercy, drawing us nearer to Him, nearer to the day when shadows flee and truth alone remains. So prepare not with fear, but with surrender. Let go of what binds you. Confess what is hidden. Return to love. And lift your eyes, for even in the darkest hours, the sky will speak, the earth will groan, and the Spirit will gather His children. You are not alone. You have never been alone. His hand is already stretched toward you, steady and strong. If these words resonate with you, leave an amen in the comments, subscribe to the channel, and share it with at least 3 friends or family members right now. Now is your time to make a difference. Spreading this message is not only an act of love, but also a mission that Jesus Himself has entrusted to you.